Hey everyone, thanks for checking out my video. I'm excited to share with you some recent work, Are We Learning? An evaluation of self and team reflexivity activities to enhance autoethnographic work. I want to start with a disclaimer. While this project involves work done reflecting on a project with my colleagues at the Veterans Health Administration, it's separate from any work or projects underway within our center, is not endorsed by the VA, and that the views and content within the presentation are my own. So reflexivity work prompts researchers to understand the personal, methodological, and structural assumptions that underlie their decision-making and work. This work is vital because unaddressed biases can impede recognition of deficiencies in autonarrative and ethnographic work project design, the impacts of project participant identities, and the consequences of one's own positionality. And while scholarship across disciplines is increasingly extolling the virtues of reflexivity activities, far less work has been done to evaluate whether such activities actually accomplish their aspired goals. And as autoethnography has been suggested as a strategy for engaging in reflexivity, I use an autoethnographic narrative to detail a process of modifying existing individual methodological reflexivity practices for use within a health service research team and evaluating them according to a priori aims. So I'll start out today by introducing some core concepts in reflexivity work. I'll then look at two pre-existing research activities drawn from existing literature that were adopted for team use, and the evaluation rubric created to evaluate whether the activities accomplish their goals according to theoretical underpinnings and team engagement when put into practice within a team consisting of clinicians, qualitative methodologists, analysts, and researchers. And so for each activity, I'll detail the process, the successes, and finish with some strategies for integrating such reflexivity activities in teamwork. So Annette Markham has an excellent way of describing reflexivity. Learning to notice what was previously not noticeable because it was too minute, too subtle, or too peripheral. So reflexivity is the sensibility of learning how to recognize and minimize, but never eliminate, the biases and assumptions we bring to the table. It's about understanding who we are as the people who do work and as the people who relate with our participants and co-researchers. Reflexivity, therefore, is an iterative process where we're learning to situate our personal experiences and selves within broader events and contexts. And when we do this repeatedly and alongside others, we can develop a community of practice where reflexive thinking becomes the standard. And this is beneficial because it's capable of touching on and benefiting each stage of the research process. Early on, it helps us build better research questions. When conducting ethnography or interpretive sociology, it helps us revisit the ways we're approaching a phenomenon of interest. In data collection or analysis, it makes us aware of what opportunities we open or close off with each interpretive or analytical decision we make. So at its core, almost Vega and I'll describe reflexivity as engaging in a set of continuous, collaborative, and multifaceted practices to self-consciously critique, appraise, and evaluate how our subjectivity and context influence the research process. A challenge within reflexivity is that while many fields have prolifically detailed activities and approaches for engaging in reflexivity as an individual, there's still a dearth of work proposing ways of engaging in these practices systemically as a team. And it's certainly important to engage in reflexivity as an individual, but when we're not talking to one another, we get stuck in silos. And given that everyone in a team brings a different self, different contexts, and different backgrounds to a project, that's a lot of complexity to be engaged with. Additionally, literature reviews, like those referenced in the top corner there, reinforce a repeating pattern. Despite calls for reflexive collaboration, little practical work exists on developing these team-level activities or metrics for evaluating activity fit, aim alignment. And so this presents an opportunity to develop materials to evaluate reflexivity activities fit within a team's expressed needs. That's not necessarily to evaluate an activity as good or bad, but to determine whether it fits team-specific needs. So to move from ideological approach to incorporated process, we need to develop structured, theoretically grounded frameworks for evaluation. So the value of this opportunity is supporting intentionality in projects, while working in that ever-continuing process of minimizing bias, increasing transparency, and improving fit between activity and aim. So within this health services research team, before conducting activities, a basic rubric was created from conversations with the team that the activities would be tested within. What were the main goals that people wanted to get out of the activities? Each goal was grafted onto reflexivity literature to nuance it more, and 5 main goals emerged. That upon completion of an activity that would be completed within the team, members wanted to attain greater self-articulation, to be better able to describe who they were and where they were coming from, and self-other articulation, that description in relation to others. They wanted to have greater clarity into the hows and whys of our project design, be able to be more agile, more able to pivot in the research process, and to become more resilient, be able to consequently have greater strength in the emotional and mental impacts of research. So the 2 activities that I'm going to discuss today here were developed respectively from Markham and Tanwer et al. They were each initially envisioned for individual reflection, but were workshopped to be done within a group, specifically a virtual group dynamic, and conducted within a virtual team of 11 clinician, health services researchers, and qualitative methodologists. So I'll go into each activity in more detail here. So first off, we did an activity called outward cartography. In this activity, you start with a basic relational prompt that inquires into a project's processes or the actors involved. For example, whose interests are served by a given intervention or institution? Or who may be missing from conversations about a variable of interest? Team members then create maps of the project's actors and processes based on the prompt. They're encouraged to insert the team and themselves into the map, although they need not be in the center. And after reviewing one another's maps, team members can revise their own based on new revelations and insights from review. Everyone then comes together to discuss the different understandings of networks, power dynamics, and the multiple ways the team is situated as a culmination of members' positionalities. The activity engages in multi-level, individual team audience, clarification of actor roles on both the study and research team sides of the projects. It goes beyond the individual to identify differences and commonalities in the perceptions of the self and other by being an active space to develop common team understandings and vocabulary. So overall, this activity has a theoretical grounding in phenomenological inquiry, deriving shared meaning about events among a group of participants to develop a composite description of a phenomena. So this example here comes from a health services project looking at experiences of end users of an electronic health record system at the Veterans Health Administration, a system that's undergoing a transition to a new record system called EHR modernization. So this transition brings together a lot of parties, and while the arrow flows here show the many directions in which information and feedback is flowing among parties, the end users themselves are centered at the core of the process in this research team member's imagination and understanding of the structure. So at the same time, it led to some realizations that while the team may have opportunities for real-time feedback to shape ongoing efforts with some players, there's other bodies in which it really doesn't have those same channels. This isn't an inherently positive or negative thing, but may affect which kinds of dissemination the team decides is worthwhile. It could also encourage efforts to reach out to some bodies that are otherwise currently not included in outreach efforts in order to capture new perspectives or ensure intervention efforts meet the needs. The second activity we conducted was one called reflexivity synchronicity, where team members thought about who they were coming to the table to do project work, coming as a product of their methodological training. Participants were given a series of prompts, seen here, that encouraged them to think about their methodological experiences narratively, where the stories they told about their methodological and analytical preferences identified their orientations associated with their perspectives and changes over time. The story told between how they acquired their tools, how they came to be adept at them, and how they continue to perpetuate them helps better understand the choices we make within this constrained project. The activity was designed to facilitate individual and team deliberations on rationale and reason behind decision-making and to provide a foundation for language seeking to articulate reasonings to external audiences. To start, the activity leader progressed through a series of prepared background inquisitive prompts. Participants responded to each prompt in a timed stream of consciousness written response, reflecting on individual responses upon completion of the writing, and then reviewing others' responses and participating in team discussion on prompt interpretation and responses. Participants were encouraged to ask questions of others, or prepared prompts can also be brought to the activity to get participants reflecting on the directions their responses went, which sometimes can be in surprising directions. For example, this participant here was asked about the methods they tend to use when collecting and analyzing data. The next question asked, "Knowing this about me, what tools do I use to interpret the world?" And while they start talking about their common core toolkit that they use, they transitioned into acknowledgement that these tools and the way they treat data are text-centric. Once data is transformed into codable text as data, it inherently shapes the kind of data they consider and have inform their activities. For example, when they say, "I believe that almost everything that can be considered data in my line of work is considered text. For better or worse, I am text-centric." So upon completion of these activities, all the participants were given the opportunity to fill out a short survey on activities to rate how they would align them in terms of fulfillment of the previously established goals. And between the two activities, team members tended to find reflexivity synchronicity as meeting more of the a priori goals than outward cartography. They felt that it supported their efforts to improve in self-articulation, process clarity, agility, and resiliency, although the outward cartography activity was believed to better meet goals of self-other articulation. It's important to note that the goal here wasn't to develop an activity that could meet all of these categories, but to start the process of more clearly establishing goals at the onset, then developing processes that can work towards meeting these goals and evaluating them in a clearer manner. Participants who are interested also could do brief interviews to get their perspectives and takes on the activities, what could be improved upon, what went well, and where they found themselves most and least engaged. These interviews made up a meaningful part of the identification of the top 3 reflections from the process. First, through the process of experimentation and evaluation, they found that a work environment was facilitated that was open to ongoing conversations about bias and equity through the research process, through activities that one participant described as rarely seen in health service research circles. Second, practice of the 2 activities demonstrated that what designers intend of an activity is not necessarily what participants experience from that activity. Developing quality materials in support of team reflexivity is an unfolding process. Just like reflexivity, it's itself iterative. Overall, the primary takeaway is that developing reflexivity muscles, the ability to take an inward look at the self, prepares researchers to engage more fully in a core feature of autoethnography, situating personal experience within broader events. Ultimately, the project not only resulted in the researcher developing a process by which reflexivity activities could be evaluated for more effectiveness, but the process of developing an evaluation also resulted in a more thoughtful community of practice within a broader health service research team. So thank you very much for your time. I'm glad to have had the chance to share this work with you. If you'd like to follow up on this topic or project or want to discuss reflexivity more broadly, feel free to reach out to me at my email here. Thank you.